Hi there, it's Howie in the UK again. I've just had a chance to see my second Dr. Berlinski video, and well, I just got to respond. This guy is a gross deceiver. Perhaps you've heard that old impossibility story of how you can't set 1,000 monkeys typing at typewriters randomly and ending up with a Shakespearean work. Well, that's the argument that Berlinski tries to employ in trying to attempt to refute evolution. He starts with Don Quixote, or as we say in Britain, Don Quixote, saying that a bunch of monks writing away couldn't possibly convert Don Quixote into Tolstoy's War and Peace. Certainly not through random change. You couldn't go from a specific start of Don Quixote and randomly end up at a specific end like War and Peace. But this problem statement that Berlinski has is a total erroneous smokescreen with no applicability to a Darwinian process, and Berlinski knows it. Let's have a look at the reality of evolution. Mutations in nature occur randomly, but because mutations occur within the framework of evolution doesn't mean that evolution as a process is random. Not at all. Let's take a look at what the process of evolution really is. It starts with a competing population, and a population that is able to replicate, and also that heredity is active within the replication process itself. That is, like begets like. The competing population fights for scarce resources, be it food or space or air, and the fitter of the members of population, which naturally vary amongst themselves, survive and reproduce. And this is a process of natural selection. And this leads to a new and fitter population, more suited to the environment in which they compete. And this new population becomes the competing population that again filters through the process of natural selection. It's an unending process going round and round and round. Natural selection is driven by measuring how well adapted the various contenders are within the population, how fit they are. Things like speed and strength and efficiency and size, measures that matter in a fight for survival, a struggle for existence. Right now, let's apply what we've discussed about evolution to Berlinski's rather silly example. Let's start with a population of books, Don Quixote, and these books will replicate themselves. And like will beget like once changes occur in these books. And in the process of natural selection, we're going to have a selection pressure, a criteria that nature is going to impose, and that is that War and Peace is a rather good read. So we start with a population of Don Quixotes, we filter it through the process of natural selection, and we create a new and more fit population. Now when we say more fit population, that population is going to be a little bit less like the Don Quixote novel and a little bit more like War and Peace. And that population is going to become the new breeding population. And this process is going to occur over and over and over again. Well, what are we going to end up with? We are going to see that Don Quixote does indeed end up to be War and Peace, because that's what evolution does. Just to drive this home, I'm going to show you the results of an example that was actually done, starting with an arbitrarily and totally random mix of letters, and filtering that through a process of natural selection. But here we have the criteria that does it look at all like a possible line from Hamlet? Well, this sort of test was actually run by the great man himself, Richard Dawkins, where he created a computer program that encapsulates algorithms of evolution. He starts the experiment with a totally random mix of alphabetic characters, just total nonsense. And he runs it repetitively through a evolutionary model that tests against whether it matches a line from Shakespeare, from Hamlet. And after 30 generations, it just begins to look like something might be emerging from the evolutionary model. And by about 100 generations, you have a phrase from the play Hamlet, in this case, Act 3, Scene 2. But let's talk about real-world systems and real things that impose themselves on the direction of evolution. Let's turn to something that really matters in nature, which is survival. And the example I'm going to give is the selection pressure that exists in being able to either detect food in your vicinity or a predator in your vicinity. And if an animal is better at doing that than its competitors, then it's going to have a greater survival value. Now, the physical principle that exists in the universe is that if light can be focused to a sensory point in some way, an object can be detected at greater distances and also under lower intensity of light. Let's start with the most primitive kind of visual sensory equipment. A bunch of cells that are translucent to light and the ability to sense whether there's light or not. And if such a primitive visual organ is modeled in a computer, and the computer actually is executing an evolutionary algorithm, that is, it follows the basic laws of evolution that we've discussed, what we see is that the structure of the cells slowly but steadily form themselves into a lens structure. Why? Because that is an optimal structure at sensing light at a distance and at low intensities. It is an evolutionary design. It's not an intended design. It is a byproduct of survival of the fittest. And this is the way things work in nature. There's not predetermined, there's no endpoint, but the laws of physics create situations where some things are better than other things, and those are the things that organisms will adapt themselves to. Berlinski is a deceiver. He's a professional deceiver. There are some people who, for strong emotional reasons, can't accept the truth of evolution. That's all well and good. People like that should have the right to live in any world that they choose, even if that world might be a world of make-believe. But there's no justification, no excuse to attack science and pervert rational truth with deliberate and calculated lies, and to try to confuse and cloud over the minds of people who really are trying to seek the truth. What Berlinski and others like him, who are also employees of the Discovery Institute, do, what they do is evil. It's a conscious, calculated effort to mislead and to insert falsehood even into the education of children.